terrorists everywhere, and that there even are returning vets from Iraq, supposedly our greatest patriots who we're supposed to hail and respect and put a ribbon sticker on the back of cars, but now they are the enemy, and that's what they're trying to do to us. Again, we have Paul Watson's article about the domestic IED threat that has been hyped for martial law takeover, and of course they're expecting somehow it's going to be veterans carrying out these explosives on highways, at places in public, what have you, while they demonize the police, split them, get them, split against the people, divide and conquer, as they invite in the drug gangs to cause more and more chaos. It's just totally bizarre, and they want to merge the military, put them all under Homeland Security, carry out checkpoints, all in the name of IEDs. It's total nonsense, Rob Dew. And it totally ties in with the FBI going out and creating the problem. They create all these terrorist organizations. They funded Hal Turner. It's admitted. It's already come out in court. And there's a great article there that Paul Watson did, or I think it's Kurt Nimmo, FBI Nazi biker group busts its own group. And, it's taken from this Orlando Sentinel article. A neo-Nazi motorcycle gang created by an undercover law enforcement unit to investigate white supremacists and racist bikers has helped topple 2 domestic terrorism groups in Central Florida. Early members include at least 2 additional FBI undercover agents who infiltrated the club. I mean, there it is right there. You got 3 FBI agents running the whole thing, and they're explosives experts, and they're getting the guy who probably is a racist. I mean, he joined one of these he's 6'6" guy, and he was supposedly really impressed that they could build all these explosive things. And when they launched one with a remote, he's like, "Well, I know who we're going after." He wanted to go after another biker gang, but that's not even beside the point. The FBI is in there creating these things. We can even look at it back. The point is they have a script to exploit the Trayvon shooting, the Colorado shooting, the Gifford shooting, to demonize guns, things like that. If we just stopped FBI informants from actually giving bombs to patsy suspects, we would cut down on 95, 96% of all terrorism cases. Every case since 9/11 has basically had an FBI informant somehow entangled, usually running the show. Oh, well, pretty much running the show. You look at that Portland Christmas tree bomber. The guy was being driven to the site by the informant. The informant got the bomb, got the truck, handed him the cell phone and said, "All you have to do is dial this number." Now, if that's not entrapment, I don't know what is. I mean, how could you have one guy get all the stuff and he gets off scot-free because he's an informant, and then it's the one guy, the one patsy. It's always the one patsy who's supposedly this mastermind. It's a 19-year-old kid. You got the same case in Ohio with these 5 kind of crackhead-looking dudes who were working for a super, and he was the mastermind behind the whole thing. He said, "Hey, I can get us explosives. Hey, we can all train here. We're going to blow up this bridge." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Give them enough crack, they'll do whatever you want." Meanwhile, the TSA has never caught a terrorist patsy. They put the underwear bomber on the plane. It was admitted he had State Department clearance. That was what, Rep. Kennedy, somebody like that? Patrick Kennedy. Patrick Kennedy broke that. We had the eyewitness, Kurt Haskell, on the ground, who witnessed the sharp-dressed man getting him on the plane. That doesn't matter, though. TSA has to roll out to train stations, to bus stations. They're coming to sports stadiums, malls. Your public life is going to be taken over by goon squads, and you're going to learn to love it unless we fight back in the info war and stop these people before they start an all-out civil war. Totally agree. And going back to Haskell a little bit, on top of watching that, he witnessed the total cover-up of the FBI back on the domestic side, changing their story 5 times. Oh, there wasn't a second guy, but then there was. But we got him because it was some agricultural thing. Well, then it was on an immigration-related thing. They just keep changing their story to try and learn to love your servitude, Rob Dew. We're going to cover the Al-Qaeda hypocrisy. We're covering the Al-Qaeda hypocrisy when we get back. All this other domestic news, cybersecurity, maybe through an executive order. Stay tuned. Infowars.com worldwide. We are back at Infowars.com. I'm your co-host, Aaron Dykes. With me is Rob Dew. Alex will again be dropping back in next hour to break down some of the most important energy news, how Obama's threatened to bankrupt the coal industry and basically make Americans deal with less. Now, we've got the shooting in the news at the Sikh temple. Another important story, though, is the defeat of the cybersecurity bill. This also included gun control registration and an attempt to take over the internet in that freedom. Now, that has been defeated, but Obama is now promising he may issue an executive order. That's in the Hill today.
and we know they've been through CISPA, PIPA, and all kinds of other attempts to rein in the internet freedom. Megadeth's Dave Mustaine disgusted with Obama's attack on wealth. There's been some news circulating after he appeared here on the Alex Jones Show not long ago. That's linked up at Infowars.com. You can watch that interview in full. Lots of exclusive, hard-hitting information. But we're really talking about Al-Qaeda and how the Pentagon has run them as a can opener, as a false threat, as a shadow boogeyman for decade after decade in country after country, because we have an imperial force which is trying to play the great game. It's trying to take over the grand chessboard. And today, of course, we have all kinds of headlines about Al-Qaeda inside Syria, about the Muslim Brotherhood poised to take over that country, Libya, Egypt, you name it, one country after another, because the wizards at the Pentagon long ago came up with the clash of civilizations. One conflict is only meant to lead into another conflict.
That's right. In 10 years, it's going to be, we got to go back into Egypt. We got to go back into Libya. We got to go back into Syria and take out these Al-Qaeda regimes. But now we're arming them and supporting them and helping them take over and overthrow the governments that were already there.
Again, this is 1984. We've always been at war with East Asia. We've never been at war with East Asia. And you've always got the hyper threat, boogeyman, external enemy that they use to get knee-jerk support. And so what's happened is, when you go back to Afghanistan, the Soviets were our great enemy then. So we funded bin Laden. We funded the Taliban. Zbigniew Brzezinski took helicopters over there, trained them how to use weapons, trained them how to fight wars. We had shadow advisors, members of the CIA, all before we officially had our own troops in there helping to support the same exact group that would later be known as our evil demon Al-Qaeda. But then they were our friends, our allies. Indeed, Ronald Reagan would go on to publicly call them founding fathers like George Washington, who once again is a threat today. So you've got Al-Qaeda built by the West, totally Pentagon built, CIA built, Western backed. You've got MI6, you've got Israeli intelligence, Mossad, Pakistani intelligence. These are the people wagging the dog on who you've learned to hate, bin Laden and his evil Al-Qaeda. But that was just phase one. They were later shipped over to Yugoslavia to help in that breakup and that destabilization operation. They would move down to different parts of Africa and the Middle East. But now in this modern age, under the war on terror, they're the evil boogeyman that all Americans fear. Yet now they're an ally once again. And so under the State Department, under Hillary's State Department, and under this Pentagon plan, we physically shipped members of Al-Qaeda to Libya. We literally airlifted them to Al-Qaeda to overthrow Gaddafi. We backed them. NATO ran no-fly zones, dropped bombs, flew planes, all to back this Al-Qaeda military force. Then they handed the country over to the Muslim Brotherhood. And it's happened in Egypt.
Afghanistan, back at right after 9/11, we airlifted them out of there, the airlift of evil. That was the first, moving them to another location, undisclosed location, where they could rearm, re-up, and then send them out and do more damage. And then the ones that we've pulled into Guantanamo, all of a sudden these guys are coming out and becoming, they're bombing bus stations in Western Europe. They're doing shootings. These people, this is a little factory where they're creating little mind control slaves to go out and then do the bidding. If they weren't a terrorist before, well, after they come out of Guantanamo, they're definitely a terrorist now.
Oh, yeah, this is all going on, and it's all about so central bankers can rule. They've got the list of countries. The hit list was exposed. Paul Wolfowitz, among other people, had that hit list. You had generals come forward talking about it, naming the specific countries: Syria, Libya, Iran, Iraq. They were all on that list. Now we have once again literally airlifted Al-Qaeda from Libya to Syria, just as he mentioned, the airlift of evil after 9/11 and the lead up to 9/11. So now the stage is set in Syria. We must topple Assad, only so we could keep the dominoes toppling, only so we could pursue a wider war and more greatly destabilize the Middle East region. Now, there's this headline from the London Telegraph: Libya, the West, and Al-Qaeda on the same side. This is admitted. This is in the mainstream press. This article is from March 2001. You can see it right here. The West and Al-Qaeda on the same side. It's admitted. I got a whole stack of it. Now, the same thing is going on in Syria. We've got Al-Qaeda tries to carve out a war for itself in Syria. Headline: Al-Qaeda ladies choir struts its stuff in rebel Syria. You've got Al-Qaeda seeking to manipulate tensions in the Middle East of its own advantage, warns experts. You've got German intelligence, Al-Qaeda all over Syria. That's in the Asia Times. The New York Times, Al-Qaeda taking deadly new role in Syria's conflict. Time, meet the Islamist militants fighting alongside Syria's rebels.
And there we have a Washington's blog article from August 3rd, government policy leading to persecution of Christians. And the end of this article, after it goes through a bunch of links, it's not a very lengthy article, but it has a lot of links to it. At the end, it says the U.S. is supporting Al-Qaeda and other terrorists in Syria, funding terrorist groups in Iran, supporting Al-Qaeda terrorists in Libya. And then it says the U.S. supports Saudi Arabia as one of its closest allies, even though Saudi Arabia restricts religion other than Islam. Christians are arrested and lashed in public for practicing their faith. Muslims are forbidden to convert to another religion. And then you have a 9/11 commissioner and co-chair of the Congressional Inquiry into 9/11 say in sworn declarations that Saudi Arabia government is linked to the 9/11 attacks. Yet they're our biggest allies because they keep the thumb on the rest of the Middle East wherever we want them to.
Look, Assad is a dictator. He's not a good guy. I don't back Assad, but at the same time, he's a sectarian stabilizing force there in Syria. You've got Al-Qaeda literally carrying out civilian massacres. They blame it on Assad, but it comes out later that it's these rebel forces lining up civilians, shooting women and children. They're burning Christian churches. And here we are, a supposedly Christian nation with our foreign policy all kinds of whack, but we're supposedly making the mental power to allow for fighting with Muslim extremist Al-Qaeda as an ally, as they burn Christian churches in Syria, shoot priests, and dance around in the uniforms as they continue to burn and pillage and rape the major cities of Syria.
And on top of that, our mainstream media, what are they doing? CNN, you have them with Syrian Danny. You have them showing video of these fake massacres of you can actually see the people getting up and laying down and having blood poured on them. They're showing fake funerals where a guy's supposedly dead, and then later on they tickle his nose and he starts laughing. It's over and over again. The mainstream media is there playing that card saying, we have to go in and do this. This is our duty because, oh, well, we got to stop Assad. We have to stop Assad. He's killing people. He's massacring people. He's, you know, and it's all fake. It's all fake. And it's the ones that were doing the terror. It's Al-Qaeda.
Look, most of the modern wars since the age of radio, TV, and print as well has been about war propaganda. Almost every major war in the 20th century was built on a false flag pretext lie. But now we see a micromanaging of the propaganda with these smaller regional conflicts. I wrote about this last week. Wag the Dog media published Photoshop forgery to sell image of war-torn Syria, and they got caught taking a file photo of a man with a baby and a woman in burqa and superimposed it on a blown-out city to create a completely manufactured false image of the war. And that's not all. The State Department is saying Al-Qaeda got into Syria all by accident when they were admittedly propped up by the West. We'll get into more of those details, but there's a lot more coming up on the show. Infowars.com, planetinfowars.com. You create your own network to fight. We'll be back after this. We are back at Infowars.com. I'm your co-host, Aaron Dykes. Rob Dew is sitting with me. Alex Jones is coming up. He's waiting in the wings, but this is hour 2 of our Sunday broadcast. We are going to finish up with some of the Al-Qaeda deception news, how they want to bring the war on terror here at home. But later in the broadcast, Alex is going to discuss the energy sanctions